The galaxy had always been a place of conflict. For centuries, different races fought over resources, power, and territory. Some fought for survival, others for dominance. And for a long time, peace was just a distant dream. But the wars had escalated. The factions were growing more powerful, their armies larger, and their weapons more deadly. In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council was holding urgent meetings. They were worried, very worried. The council was made up of representatives from the most powerful races in the galaxy, alien species who had once ruled vast territories. But now, they were struggling to maintain control. New threats were emerging. Every day, new alliances were formed, while old ones fell apart. The balance of power was shifting, and the council couldn't keep up. Among the most concerning developments was the rise of the Valdarians, a fierce alien race that had just finished a massive war with the Thaurics. The Valdarians had won, and they were now expanding rapidly into neighboring systems. Their warships were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Massive, heavily armed, and terrifying. The Valdarians had the technology and the ambition to conquer the galaxy. They had already wiped out several smaller factions, and now they were eyeing the more powerful civilizations. But the Valdarians were not the only threat. The Gorthians, a race of ruthless traitors, had been secretly building an army of mercenaries. They were known for using money and promises of power to manipulate weaker factions into doing their bidding. The Gorthians were experts in warfare and had a reputation for never losing. Their influence was growing, and many feared they would soon take control of entire star systems. And then there were the humans. The humans were a small, relatively unknown race in the galaxy. They had just begun to expand beyond their homeworld, Earth. Their technology was primitive compared to the other races, and they were mostly seen as a nuisance. Most of the galaxy had dismissed humanity as a minor player, not worth worrying about. But now, the rumors were starting to spread. Whispers of something strange, something powerful, coming from the human colonies. Some said it was a new weapon. Others said it was an entire fleet. The Galactic Council was divided. Some members laughed off the rumors, convinced that humanity posed no real threat. Others, however, took the reports seriously. They argued that if humans had developed something powerful enough to compete with the advanced weapons of the galaxy's most dominant races, they needed to be watched closely. As the council debated, the tension in the galaxy grew. Systems that had once been peaceful were suddenly on edge. Military forces were being moved, alliances were being tested, and everyone was preparing for something. But no one knew exactly what. The Valdarians were making their move. Their warships appeared in system after system, demanding surrender or offering destruction. The Council sent fleets to try to stop them, but each time, the Valdarians crushed their resistance. No one seemed to have the strength to stop them. Many believed that the Valdarians were going to be the new rulers of the galaxy. In the shadows, the Gorthians were making their own plans. They had started secretly negotiating with the Valdarians, offering them weapons and resources in exchange for future favors. The Council was starting to fear that the two races were working together. If the Valdarians and Gorthians formed an alliance, the entire galaxy could fall under their control. But in the midst of all this chaos, something strange began to happen. Signals were detected on the edge of known space, unusual, powerful signals that no one could identify. The Council's best analysts couldn't make sense of it. The signals didn't match any known technology. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Some experts thought it could be the Valdarians testing new weapons. Others thought it might be the Gorthians making the new move. But the more they investigated, the more confused they became. The signals were coming from a direction no one had ever considered: the human territories. No one knew for sure what these signals meant, but one thing was certain: humanity was preparing for something. The Council couldn't ignore it any longer. They had to find out what was happening. Was humanity secretly building a fleet? Was this the weapon that could change everything? Or was it a trap? The entire galaxy held its breath, waiting for the answer. The tension in the galaxy was thick, and no one knew what the future held. But everyone knew one thing. The balance of power was about to shift. No one was prepared for what was coming. No one knew that, in the midst of all this chaos, a force was about to emerge, one that would change everything. And it was human. The galaxy was on edge. News of the mysterious signals had spread like wildfire. Everyone was watching the human territories, waiting for something to happen. The Galactic Council had gathered again, trying to decide what to do. They had to act quickly, but no one knew exactly what they were dealing with. Some believed the signals were a warning from humanity, while others feared they were the beginning of a new war. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the center of power, something was happening. On the edge of the human colonies, a massive warship was slowly making its way through space. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Its dark, metallic surface glinted in the starlight, and its shape was strange, angular, and sharp, unlike the sleek, curved designs of the other warships in the galaxy. The human warship moved quietly, almost as if it were a shadow, gliding through the stars. No one knew it was coming. There had been no warning, no announcement. The ship had appeared out of nowhere, as if it had always been there, waiting. It was so big that it seemed to block out the stars behind it. Its enormous size made every other ship in the vicinity look tiny. Its engines hummed softly, but with an almost eerie power. Even from a distance, the energy coming from the ship was immense. It wasn't just the size that was impressive. It was the overwhelming presence of the ship itself. It was as if the universe had never seen anything like it before. The first to notice it were the Valdarians. Their advanced scanners picked up the massive object on their screens. They thought at first it was just a shadow, a trick of the light, but as it grew closer they realized it was real. Their ships quickly moved into formation, ready to engage whatever it was, but they were not prepared for what happened next. The ship came into full view, and panic spread throughout the Valdarian fleet. Their commanders tried to make sense of the sight before them. They had encountered many threats in their time, races with weapons far beyond what the galaxy had seen. But this was different. This was human technology, and it was unlike anything they had ever encountered. "Report," screamed a Valdarian general as he watched the human warship approach. His voice trembled with uncertainty. "It's human," one of the officers replied, his voice barely audible. "But how? How did they build something like this?" The general's mind raced. He had heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. There had been whispers of a new human weapon, something that could change the tide of the war, but no one had ever taken it seriously. The humans were a young, inexperienced race. They were known for their resourcefulness, but not their military might. How had they built such a ship? As the Valdarian fleet hesitated, unsure of what to do, the human warship continued its approach, its massive hull blocking out the stars. There was no communication, no warning. The silence was deafening. It felt as though the entire galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next move. The human warship slowly turned, its weapon systems coming to life. For a moment, it seemed as though the ship was scanning the enemy fleet, as if assessing the strength of its opponents. And then, without a single word or warning, the human warship fired. A bright beam of energy shot from the ship's main cannon. It was so powerful that it seemed to warp the very fabric of space itself. The beam struck a Valdarian cruiser, and in an instant, the ship was torn apart. The blast was so intense that it sent shockwaves through space, rattling the Valdarian fleet. The entire fleet froze. The Valdarians had never seen anything like it. Their ships were advanced, but nothing they had ever built could withstand the force of that attack. They quickly tried to regroup, but they were already outclassed. The human warship was unstoppable. More blasts followed. One by one, the Valdarian ships were destroyed. They attempted to retaliate, launching missiles and firing energy weapons, but nothing they did had any effect. The human warship moved with a calm, almost methodical precision, picking off the Vuldarian ships as if they were nothing more than targets. In the distance, the Galactic Council had been watching from their command center. The news spread like wildfire. A human warship had appeared, and it was unlike anything they had ever seen. They watched in stunned silence as the Vuldarian fleet was decimated in mere moments. The council members couldn't believe their eyes. "Is this real?" one of the council members asked, his voice shaking. "Did humanity do this? How?" The answer came quickly. The Vuldarian fleet was in ruins, scattered across the battlefield like broken toys. The human warship had arrived, and it was clear that humanity was no longer a minor player. They had arrived, and they were ready to fight. The galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The human warship had appeared out of nowhere, decimating the Vuldarian fleet with terrifying speed and precision. In the cold void of space, there was no sound, only the bright flashes of energy beams and the slow, painful destruction of the Vuldarian ships. Every explosion was a reminder of how little the galaxy understood humanity's true power. The Vuldarians, known for their ruthless tactics and advanced technology, had never been defeated so easily. They had conquered many worlds, wiped out entire civilizations, and built a reputation for being unstoppable. But now, facing this human warship, they were like children in the face of a storm. The survivors of the Vuldarian fleet scattered. The remaining ships tried to regroup, but their spirits were crushed. Their once proud warships limped through space, damaged and broken, as they fled from the human ship. The fear was clear in the eyes of their commanders, who had never seen their forces so weak. Back in the Vuldarian command center, the leaders were in a panic. They had never been so unprepared. The images from the battle were still flashing across the screens, showing the destruction of their most powerful ships. The warship that had done this was still out there, silently watching them. No one knew where it was, but they knew it wasn't finished yet. "Reinforcements are on the way," one of the officers said, trying to remain calm. "We need to regroup, find the human warship, and destroy it before it's too late." But even as the words left his mouth, the officer's eyes showed doubt. The human warship had just destroyed an entire fleet. What chance did they have against it? The Vuldarian general, once known for his cold-blooded determination, now sat in stunned silence. His reputation, built on years of victories, seemed to crumble before his eyes. "How could they do this?" he muttered to himself. "How could humans be this powerful? This is not supposed to be possible." The council, the highest authority in the Vuldarian Empire, was in an emergency meeting. The leaders argued loudly, their voices echoing through the chamber. Some called for a full retreat, others demanded an immediate counterattack. But no one had any clear answers. The general's mind raced. He thought about the human warship, the way it moved, the way it seemed to tear through their defenses without even trying. It wasn't just the ship's firepower. It was the way the humans fought. It was as though they didn't fear death. It was as though they had nothing to lose. "They're coming for us," the general finally said, his voice low and heavy with realization. "The humans are not afraid of us. We've been too confident, too arrogant. We thought we could crush them. Now, they've shown us what real strength looks like." Elsewhere, the news of the human warship's appearance was spreading. Across the galaxy, many factions watched with growing fear. The Vuldarians had always been seen as the most powerful race in the galaxy. If they could be defeated by humans, what did that mean for the rest of them? The Gorthians, a race of traitors and mercenaries, were already making plans. They had been quietly building their own fleet, preparing for the day when they would make their move to control the galaxy. But now, with the rise of the human warship, the Gorthian leaders were growing anxious. If humans were this strong, how could they compete? The Gorthian fleet had always relied on speed, strategy, and overwhelming numbers. But it was clear now that brute force and sheer power could do far more damage than any strategy. The Gorthians began to question everything. Should they form an alliance with humanity? Should they prepare for war? Even the Galactic Council, the group that had always maintained control over the galaxy's largest factions, was in disarray. Some members suggested trying to contact the humans and negotiate. Others demanded that they be destroyed before they could become a real threat. But everyone agreed on one thing: they could no longer ignore humanity. On the battlefield, the human warship continued its silent watch, as if waiting for the next move. The fear it had caused rippled across the galaxy. Every faction, whether they were enemies of the Valdarians or distant, neutral races, knew that things had changed. Humanity had not only entered the war, they had declared that they would not be pushed around. In the heart of the galaxy, the Council called for an emergency session. Representatives from every major race, once confident in their own power, now sat nervously, wondering what humanity's next move would be. The fear was undeniable. A new player had entered the field, and they were more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. "We've underestimated them," one of the council members said, his voice shaking. "Humanity is not just another race. They've come to fight, and they will not stop until they've won." The galaxy was on the brink of something new, something no one was prepared for. Fear had gripped the hearts of the strongest races in the galaxy, and no one knew what to expect next. The galaxy was holding its breath. No one had ever seen anything like the human warship before. It had destroyed the Valdarian fleet with terrifying speed and precision. And now it was waiting for the next move, waiting for anyone who dared challenge it. The whole galaxy was on edge, and no one knew what would happen next. The Galactic Council had been forced into action. They couldn't ignore humanity any longer. Representatives from every faction, from the most powerful to the weakest, gathered in an emergency meeting. Some were in fear, others in anger, and some were even curious. But one thing was certain: no one wanted to face the wrath of the human warship. "We cannot wait any longer," one of the council members said, his voice shaking. "The human warship is out there, and if we don't act now, we may be the next target." The council agreed. They would send a combined fleet to confront the human ship. The Valdarians, the Gorthians, and even some smaller factions that had once been neutral quickly aligned themselves, determined to show humanity that they couldn't just come into the galaxy and do whatever they pleased. They would fight back. The fleet was massive. It was made up of the best ships from each of the races, huge, heavily armed warships, all ready for battle. It was the largest force the galaxy had ever seen. But as they moved into position, there was an unsettling feeling in the air. Even the bravest soldiers couldn't shake the fear that had taken hold of them since the human warship's first attack. They all knew they were facing something unknown, something powerful. The human warship had been quiet since its first attack, waiting in the distance, but now it began to move. Slowly, almost casually, it turned toward the incoming fleet. The silence was deafening. There were no threats, no warnings, just the ship, drifting toward them like an unstoppable force. As the fleet closed in, the tension grew. The commanders of the combined fleet watched from their ships, their eyes locked on the human warship. They could see its enormous size on the radar, and it was clear that it was fully powered up, its weapons systems activated. "Prepare to engage," one of the commanders ordered, his voice firm but nervous. The fleet moved into attack formation, ready to unleash everything they had. They would not allow the humans to destroy them like they had done to the Valdarians. The first wave of missiles was launched, cutting through space toward the human warship. They exploded upon impact, but the human ship didn't even flinch. It was as though the missiles had done nothing. They had no effect on the ship. The human warship's shields absorbed the blasts without a single sign of damage. The fleet fired again, this time using energy weapons, but the result was the same: nothing. The commanders were in shock. This wasn't supposed to happen. The combined fleet was powerful, but their weapons seemed useless against the human warship. It was as if the ship was invincible, The enemy warships continued to fire, desperate to cause even the smallest amount of damage. But it was clear now, they were outmatched. Then, without warning, the human warship returned fire. Its main cannon fired a beam of concentrated energy so powerful that it lit up the entire battlefield. The beam sliced through the first ship of the combined fleet with ease. It didn't even stand a chance. The ship's hull crumpled under the power of the blast, and within seconds, it was a burning wreck drifting through space. The fleet froze in shock. The first ship had been destroyed in a single hit. Panic spread like wildfire as the human warship continued its assault. It fired again, and another ship was torn apart in an instant. "Fall back! Fall back!" one of the commanders screamed. "We can't win this battle." But it was too late. The human warship moved with deadly efficiency. It didn't need to chase its enemies. It simply fired again and again, picking off the ships one by one. The remaining fleet members tried to regroup, but their morale was shattered. They couldn't even begin to comprehend the power they were up against. The Gorthians, known for their cunning and speed, tried to scatter their ships, hoping to avoid the human warship's fire. But even with their speed, they couldn't outrun the human weapons. The human warship fired once more, and a Gorthian ship exploded into a cloud of debris. The Valdarians, who had once been the most feared force in the galaxy, were now fleeing. The general who had once been so confident in his forces was now watching in disbelief as his ships were obliterated one by one. The fleet that had once been unstoppable was now nothing more than a broken, scattered group of survivors. The human warship moved without hesitation. It was clear that it was not just fighting to win. It was sending a message. This was no ordinary battle. This was a statement. Humanity had arrived, and it would not be defeated. It would not back down. By the time the last ship of the combined fleet had been destroyed, the battlefield was silent. The human warship stood victorious, its weapons still humming softly, waiting for its next move. The galaxy had just learned a painful truth. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And now, everyone knew that the war had truly begun. The galaxy was in chaos. News of the battle between the human warship and the combined fleet had spread quickly, and the galaxy was reacting in ways no one could have predicted. The power of the human warship, its ability to destroy entire fleets with ease, had shaken the foundation of everything the galaxy's races thought they knew. On distant planets, civilians watched in shock as news reports showed the destruction of the Valdarian and Gorthian fleets. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. The humans, once considered a minor race, had just defeated two of the most powerful forces in the galaxy without breaking a sweat. This was not supposed to be possible. The human warship had destroyed entire fleets in mere minutes, leaving behind only wreckage and fear. The leaders of the galaxy were in disarray. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of unity and power, was now fractured. Members argued bitterly, their voices rising in anger and fear. Some demanded immediate action, calling for an all-out war against humanity. Others, more cautious, urged negotiation, believing that there must be a way to form an alliance with the humans before things escalated further. But no matter what the council decided, one thing was clear: humanity was no longer a minor player. They were a force to be reckoned with. "It's impossible," shouted a representative from the Valdarian Empire. "We've been crushed. The human warship, how could they have built something like that? We need to destroy them before they wipe out everyone. We can't just attack blindly," another council member from the Gorthian delegation said, her voice trembling. "The humans have proven that they have power beyond anything we can imagine. If we engage them recklessly, we could all fall." Across the galaxy, factions were scrambling to make sense of what had happened. The Valdarians, once the dominant force, were now reeling from their defeat. The surviving Valdarian commanders, humiliated by their failure, were calling for reinforcements. They needed to rebuild their strength, but deep down, they all knew it would not be easy. How could they fight a race that had destroyed them so easily? The Gorthians, the mercenary traders who had always relied on speed and numbers, were debating how to respond. Some suggested forming an alliance with the humans, hoping to avoid the kind of destruction they had witnessed. Others were more aggressive, thinking that the only way to survive was to challenge the humans head-on. But deep in their hearts, they knew it was a dangerous gamble. If they miscalculated, they too could be wiped out in an instant. Even smaller factions that had once stayed neutral were now scrambling to prepare for war. The Ronteri, a race known for their technological prowess, began to accelerate their own weapon development, hoping to match the strength of the human warship. The Tulkans, a more peaceful race, were torn. Many of them wanted to retreat, hoping that the humans would leave them alone. But others saw the potential for an alliance, believing that humans could help them defend their planets from stronger enemies. The fear that had spread after the battle wasn't just limited to the leaders of the galaxy. Ordinary people, from every race and every corner of the galaxy, were filled with fear and uncertainty. They saw what humanity had done, and they wondered if their worlds would be next. It wasn't just a military threat. It was a fear of the unknown, of a race that had been underestimated for so long suddenly showing a strength that no one had expected. Back on Earth, the leaders of humanity were watching the reactions closely. They had no intention of backing down, but they didn't want to escalate things to the point of total war. The warship's arrival had been a clear statement. Humanity was here to stay, and it would not be intimidated. But the leaders knew that the galaxy would never forget what had just happened. They could not undo the destruction they had caused. "We've proven our point," the human general said to his team, standing in a command center surrounded by reports. "But we have to be careful. The galaxy won't just roll over because of one victory. We need to make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." Some human leaders called for peace talks, hoping to avoid an all-out war. Others, more radical in their thinking, pushed for an expansion of humanity's influence. There were whispers of using the human warship as leverage, forcing the galaxy's powers to bend to their will. But even these voices knew that pushing too far could lead to disaster. As the days passed, the galaxy continued to react. Ships from every corner of the galaxy began moving, gathering forces, and making decisions. The next moves would be crucial. The threat of a galaxy-wide war loomed large, but the humans were not backing down. They had made their point, and now they were ready for the next phase. The galaxy was changing. The balance of power had shifted, and no one knew what the future would hold. Would humanity forge alliances with the other races, or would they continue their path of destruction, forcing everyone to fear them? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy was on edge. Every race, every faction, was still reeling from the devastation caused by the human warship. The question on everyone's mind was the same. What did humanity want? Why had they shown such strength? And what would they do next? The answer came when the human warship, having destroyed the combined fleet, moved into a central position in the galaxy. It was not hidden, not trying to sneak away. It was visible for all to see. The message was clear. It wasn't just about the warship. It was about something far greater. A broadcast was sent out across the galaxy. It wasn't a message of threats, nor a plea for peace. It was a simple declaration of purpose, one that would change the future forever. The voice of a human commander, calm and steady, came through the communication channels. His words were clear, strong, and unwavering. He spoke in a language that everyone understood, one that transcended the differences between races and species. "We are humanity," he said. "We've come to this galaxy, not to conquer, but to stand. We've shown our strength, and we will not back down. But we do not seek war. We seek respect. You have seen what we are capable of. We will not be underestimated, and we will not be ignored." The broadcast echoed through every corner of the galaxy. It wasn't just a warning. It was a statement. The humans were no longer a race that could be dismissed or overlooked. They had proven their power in the most dramatic way possible, And now, they were making it clear that they were here to stay. Understand this, the voice continued. We will defend ourselves, and we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. If you choose to stand in our way, you will feel our wrath. But if you seek peace, if you are willing to work with us, we will honor that. We will form alliances, we will share knowledge, and we will build a future together. The human commander's words were not full of anger or aggression. They were matter of fact, almost like a promise. Humanity had no interest in ruling the galaxy with an iron fist, but they would not allow anyone to push them around either. It was a message of strength, but also one of cooperation. The choice, the commander said, was up to the rest of the galaxy. As the message ended, a sense of shock and confusion spread across the galaxy. Many races were still grappling with the fact that humanity, a race they had once considered weak, was now the most powerful force in the galaxy. But as the days passed, something else began to emerge, something unexpected. Instead of retaliating, instead of declaring war against humanity, many factions began to listen. Some were scared, others were curious, and a few saw an opportunity. The Rontari, a race known for their technological genius, immediately sent a message requesting a meeting with the humans. They wanted to discuss the possibility of an alliance, believing that working with humanity could benefit both sides. The Tulkans, who had long been a peaceful race, also sent a message asking for protection and offering their resources in return. The Valdarians, the race that had suffered the most in the recent battle, were still in shock. Their pride had been shattered, and their forces were weakened, but even they understood the message. They knew that humanity had not just shown power, they had shown restraint. The Valdarians had been destroyed, yes, but the humans had not wiped them out entirely. There was still a chance for them to rebuild and re-establish themselves, but they had to work with humanity, not against them. The Gorthians, who had long relied on their mercenary fleets to get by, were hesitant. They were always looking for an advantage, always planning for the next opportunity. But even they could not ignore the strength the humans had shown. Many of their leaders began to consider the possibility of aligning with humanity, seeing the potential for mutual benefit. But there were still those who feared that cooperating with humans would lead to their own downfall. In the meantime, the rest of the galaxy's smaller races began to shift their focus. They no longer saw humanity as a threat to be destroyed. They saw them as a powerful ally, one that could help them defend their worlds from larger, more aggressive factions. Humanity's message was simple: work with us, and we will help you. Refuse, and we will show you why you should have accepted our offer. It wasn't just about strength anymore. Humanity had sent a message about respect, about standing together against the forces that threatened the galaxy. They had shown that they were not a race that would be wiped out or enslaved. They were not a race to be ignored. The galaxy had been put on notice. The message was clear, and it was being heard loud and clear. Humanity was no longer a footnote in the history of the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they had just set the stage for a new era. The galaxy was left in a state of uneasy quiet. After the broadcast from the human warship, things had changed. The chaos of battle was over, but the ripple effects were far from finished. Each race, each faction, was now faced with the weight of the message humanity had sent. No one could go back to the way things were before. The humans had shown their strength, the destruction of entire fleets, the power of their warship, the calm confidence in their message. It all made one thing clear: humanity was no longer weak. They were now a dominant force in the galaxy, and everyone had to decide how to respond. For many, the first reaction was fear. The Valdarians, who had once been the strongest in the galaxy, were now picking up the pieces of their shattered fleet. They had been humiliated. Their leaders were angry, their people frightened. But there was also a sense of respect for the humans. They knew they had been defeated, and it had been swift. There was no denying that humanity had earned their place in the galaxy. But how would they move forward? Would they rebuild on their own, or would they have to cooperate with the humans to survive? Some Vuldarian commanders still held out hope that they could recover their strength and strike back. Others, however, recognized the reality. They were outclassed. It was a difficult pill to swallow, but they understood that an alliance with humanity might be their only chance of survival. The Gorthians were more hesitant. Known for their cunning and mercenary ways, they saw every opportunity as a potential profit. Many of their leaders were in deep discussion, unsure whether to risk entering the humans or to try and work with them. The Gorthians were not afraid to fight, but they had always relied on numbers and speed, not brute force. They had seen firsthand what the human warship could do. Some thought they should try to make a deal, offering their mercenary fleets in exchange for protection. Others feared the humans would be just as ruthless as they had been in battle, and a deal might end up being more dangerous than they realized. Meanwhile, smaller races like the Tulkans and the Rontari were already making moves to contact humanity. The Tulkans, whose peaceful ways had often made them targets, saw the humans as a potential protector. They had watched as the humans destroyed those who had threatened them, and they felt a sense of security knowing that humanity might stand by them. They offered their resources, hoping to form an alliance that would guarantee their safety. The Rontari, who had always prided themselves on their advanced technology, saw a different opportunity. They wanted to learn from humanity, to understand the secrets behind the human warship and the technology that made it so powerful. They sent a message asking for cooperation, offering their own technological advancements in return for knowledge. Not everyone, however, was ready to accept humanity's message of peace. Some factions, particularly those who had once been in control, were still resentful. They couldn't accept that their power had been stripped away so quickly. Their pride wouldn't allow them to bend a knee to a race they had once considered weak. There was a growing tension in the galaxy. Some factions were willing to work with humanity, believing it was in their best interest to cooperate and avoid another catastrophic war. Others, however, wanted to resist, to push back against the humans, and try to reclaim their lost dominance. It was clear that the galaxy was at a crossroads, and the decisions made in the aftermath of humanity's rise would shape the future for years to come. As for humanity, they were watching everything closely. Their leaders had made their message clear. They were not here to dominate, but they were also not going to let anyone push them around. They had come to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as equals, ready to stand alongside the other races or to fight for their place in the stars. Humanity's response to the aftermath was calm but firm. Their leaders knew that they had earned respect, but they also understood the risks of letting their power go unchecked. They began preparing for any potential conflict, not with fear, but with confidence. They had already proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with the strongest forces in the galaxy, and they were ready to continue proving themselves. The people of Earth, too, were affected by the aftermath. Many were filled with pride, knowing that their people had made such an impact on the galaxy. But there was also a sense of responsibility. Humanity had made their mark, but now they had to figure out what kind of galaxy they wanted to create. Would they be a race that sought peace and cooperation, or would they be drawn into the endless struggles of power and war that had defined the galaxy for so long? In the end, the aftermath was not just about the humans. It was about the galaxy as a whole. The balance of power had shifted. No one could deny it. But how the galaxy would react in the long term was still uncertain. One thing was clear. The human warship had changed everything, and no one, no matter their size or strength, could ignore the message it had sent.